Guys, I'm Kaisa and welcome to my channel. Today we'll be talking about Woman in the Window, which wasn't a movie I was going to talk about, review, watch, whatever. Then I realized it went through its own trials and tribulations to get onto your Netflix screen. I was like, okay, what's this movie about? If you don't know, Woman in the Window is about an out-of-work woman who's a child psychologist. Stuff happens. It's in the vein of like Gone Girl, Girl in the Train, Baby in the Dumpster, like that kind of vibe with a questionable narrator that makes you think, oh, is what they're saying actually real or not? This was supposed to be Amy Adams' 7th Oscar nomination and possibly her first win, and Gary Oldman's 2nd Oscar win. So going into this film, people thought that this movie was going to be the freaking shit, and that was going to take everyone by storm. It was going to knock down poster boards in theaters, best-selling film, Oscar winner, but like it completely and utterly failed. This film is based on a 2018 book of the same name, and this movie was actually optioned for film 2 years prior for the book being even published. So the person who saw this was like, hey, this is gonna be a hit. And they thought it was like, at the time, like thought it was gonna be a bop. There's this whole thing about the writer of the book being a liar and his whole backstory being complete other lies. He lied about having cancer, he lied about his mom dying, like it was insane. This movie went through all these different reshoots and re-edits. Like they had the film out, they thought it was gonna be like, okay, great, because the original was released in 2019. Test audiences hated it. They're like, what is this garbage? What is this trash? This story makes no sense. Had to do 100 re-edit, producers changed, sound crew changed. They had to do a lot of it. And so it all got to the point where we see today on Netflix of a beautiful disaster that has a 27% on Rotten Tomatoes. So I'm excited to watch this with you and to tell you about this film. Please remember to like and subscribe. Kaya Simone, comment if you like this content from me. But enough about that, let's get into this movie. In A Woman in the Window, we're introduced to Anna, who is a child psychiatrist who has agoraphobia. And we slowly learn about how she comes to have agoraphobia and like the current state of her life. But most important thing is that like she has a husband and a child, but she lives separately from them due to her behavior. And she goes to a psychiatrist regularly who thinks she's insane and crazy and needs help, but she does not think she needs help. And she drinks alcohol with her medication. And I felt kind of offended about that point. Because like, hey, let her do her. But like, I know you're a psychiatrist and you're a medical professional, so you have to let her do that. But like, you know, like I was kind of getting into it. But like, I was at this point, I was like kind of curious. I was like, okay, so like, what more about her? What are we really going to learn about who she is? Is she an alcoholic who dies with her medication? Does she witness something? Like, what's the tea here? Like, please sis, like, let's spill. First thing I was very curious about is like why we have this other man's voice who has like these conversations with her. I was just really confused. I was like, is there her inner dialogue? Is she actually have multiple personality disorder? Like, are we getting another one of her voices? Like, that'd be interesting. Like, give me a split moment. Like, you know, let's go there. But the key thing this thing does set up for us is that she spends the vast amount of time, she doesn't go anywhere, watching the neighbors that she has. She lives in a brownstone in New York. So we have like different windows, just like the viewpoint in. So we have like new neighbors in their $5 million home, say how much the home is worth, who's moving into it. So she gets a good amount of visibility into the lives of people around her. We're introduced to this weird random kid who comes over with a gift from his mother. I don't know that much about agoraphobia, but I thought you weren't. I just know you're not okay with like going places, but I know you're comfortable with having random people come into your house. Like, I like defeats the purpose, in my opinion. But like, what if like a whole people of a mall, like everyone in your neighborhood like came to your house, you'd be fine with that, but you can't go places. I don't know. It just seems kind of peculiar. But like, she gets this kid a drink, and like he's like talking about, oh, you're a psychiatrist, we learn more about her backstory. He says, I watched this you through my bedroom. And he seemed like himself that he would need a psychiatrist because he's like under 16. And at this point, I'm just very confused and concerned. Like, who is this character? What does he play in the greater role? Now, that's always my question. Like, what is your purpose this character serves? And I absolutely hate when characters don't serve any purposes. I don't know if I touched on this, but like the movie started with saying the day was Monday. So I guess this movie takes a period of like a week or a month. And one of my pet peeves is when films do not do a good job of explaining the time period it covers. One of my favorite films is How to Be Single with Dakota Johnson. I am single, so maybe that's why. But I love that it has a clear time period. It uses the holidays, like St. Patrick's Day, Valentine's Day, Christmas, to move the plot along until how much time has passed. A lot of films don't do that accurately, and I hate that. I don't know if it has a week has passed, I don't know if a day has passed, I don't know if like years have passed, you know? Like something that's important and crucial. We learn she has a tenant who lives in her house. He seems like a very nice man. It is Halloween. And like, does she want to do anything? She's like, no, I can't open the door for someone's like, what do you expect from me? So he's like, okay, fine. On Halloween's night, as children do, they go and accost her house, throwing things at it. And we kind of see one of the first struggles she has for her agoraphobia. Is she going to actually go outside and yell at the children? Is she just going to try to like speak through the mailbox and let them know what's going on? And we get her see her struggle almost becoming the whole question of like, what will she actually do? Will she go out the door? Probably not, because we know what this movie's about. Or will she just kind of like stand it up? It was really curious. I was like, wouldn't most people just ignore it? You know, pop in your earplugs, drink a whole bottle of wine, you know, like just block it out. It's like one night of the year. But she has this like this whole journey to go and actually put herself in the situation. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you're not agoraphobic for a minute. Like, I don't know if you, like, I feel like you've been to Halloween before. Like, I don't know. I don't know you, but it was a moment. It's definitely a moment. So she just opened the door, and lo and behold, it's Jane Russell, the parent to the guy you met, Ethan, the person who came earlier, who comes and saves her when when a whole bunch of eggs are thrown at her by the local neighborhood children. And again, I'm like, oh, I'm so glad you have like, you can't go outside, but I'm so happy like more people come inside. Now I keep repeating this, but I'm just like shook every time I think of it, because like it's literally messing with my preconception, my pre-notion of like what agoraphobia means. Like, agoraphobia just means you don't go outside. You're afraid to go outside in the world. It doesn't mean like you're afraid of the world coming to you. Also starting to think, and maybe this is why the test audiences were confused, because apparently one of the points that he they had to do a rewrite and refilming is because they wanted to get the audience more about what's happening, but not giving them too much, because apparently everyone's like just confused. Like, it made this make sense. And I feel like maybe things around this don't add up more so. Like, Amy Adams is already giving me her everything. She's giving me brilliance. She is like giving me haggard woman who doesn't go anywhere. But like her plot, I just don't know what's happening. Or I'm like 15 minutes into this film and I just don't know. Somehow her and Jane are becoming friends or something, and like Jane stays over till like nighttime and they're drinking wine. She's like asking her, am I gonna ask you how big agoraphobe? But that goes to her medication. And she's like, oh, I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to be drinking this with alcohol. I'm like, no shit, what medication can you drink with alcohol? Like, I have allergy medicine, but like I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to drink it with wine. You know, like I mean, it's not crucial, but like there's like some things like, no shit, Sherlock. But also it's like the second, I think third time we're getting that point through this movie. So I think they're trying to lay the ground that she's like unreliable, that like what she's gonna see and say in the future is because of her drinking with her medication. Okay, cool, we get it at this point. I get it. Don't need to tell me again. I'm sure you're gonna tell me a freaking other time, you know? Like, we spend about 15 minutes of this movie with her talking to Jane. And at this point, I am thinking, you must be the person who gets murdered. You must be the person you must be the woman at the window that she recognizes getting murdered or something happened to her. Because otherwise, why are we spending so much freaking time with you at this point? It's honestly ridiculous. Jane's talking about her husband, how he's kind of jealous, possessive, but like is also oblivious to what's going on in her life and like her concerns with her child Ethan, but it's like doing anything with him. He's like 16 at this point. I'm like, you should, like, people think you need therapy. Like, he could go to therapy. Like, you have full power for making that happen. I find this so fascinating. She has a neighbor, one of her neighbors who just moves in and comes and like rings her own doorbell. It's like, hey, I'm your neighbor. I just moved in. I find this so fascinating that she still has neighbors who come and visit her out of the blue, even though she hasn't been introduced to them. This book was written in 2018, so you're telling me this is still a thing that happens? Like, maybe I just don't live in those places. Like, I just have never had those experiences. And if you have them, please let me know down below. It's a real thing that happens. But the idea that she has so many random visitors who visit her, wild, unfathomable. I'm glad she found the one place where people actually visit her for agoraphobia. She calls the police because she hears something in her apartment, her brownstone, her 3-level majestic $1 million masterpiece. And it just turns out to be the tenant who lives in her building. Like, sis, I'm a little concerned. I'm very concerned for you at this point, because how does he normally come home? I feel like he's lived with you for a minute and you still aren't comfortable. You don't know how he comes home. Sis, because she's the queen of being around late night, hears a scream from next door. And fortunately for her, it's the one family she knows their number for. And she calls them, and like she talks to Ethan. And Ethan's sounding freaked out as hell. And I'm very concerned that something happened. And she's like, hey, something happened. And he's like, no, of course. Like, nothing's happened. Like, we're completely, like, it's like, okay. Like, how can I believe you at this point? You're a very bad liar. Just admit it or don't answer my phone, you know? She's peeking out the window and she sees Jane running off. So at this point, I'm like, okay, totally the story must be about Jane and her family. And I'm guessing her husband kills her. Simple. All right, what's the mystery here? I'm guessing they're gonna tell us. I'm guessing they're gonna tell us and more of this film that we're watching for some reason. Then she gets a call from a number that she just called, like, Ethan's house, and it's the husband, Jane's husband. And he's like, hey, why'd you call? And she's like, oh, I thought I heard a scream. He's like, no scream. It's just me and my son. Like, that's it. He has a cleaver in his hand. And I'm like, this girl can see you. Like, do you not realize she can see you? And he's like, no, nothing happened. So if this does not happen and this man does not kill his wife Jane or his son, or it doesn't all turn out to be a lie, what is this movie even about? That's the point I'm at. Like, you're literally trying to get us so entrenched and so ingrained in this family. I'm already there. Do you know what the next 40 minutes are gonna be? I don't think so. This book was a bestseller, y'all. And she goes on to her tenant and asking parents to scream. Like, one, he's in the basement. Two, it's kind of weird that she's so obsessive about this, because she saw the victim walk away and was able to speak to the son. And I imagine the mother wouldn't walk away knowing her son was killed or heavily injured. That's just personally how I felt in the moment. I don't know if you watched this, felt that same way, but that's how I was in this minute moment. And it seemed like a lot for this speculative moment she was having. But again, the wine and the medication, right? That's always going to go back to, like, the wine and the medication is always going to be the reason for all of this happening. They're bleeding. Why is everyone an alcoholic to make your story seem unbelievable? Woman on a train, recovering alcoholic who was being gaslit by her husband, you know? Like, why? I guess it's like the easiest way. It's like, I think it's a cop-out. Like, alcohol is the easiest solution to why someone's insane and has, like, implausible stories. Let's try harder than, like, making us believe this person's an alcoholic. It's not that hard. Show me some glasses of wine, then passed out popping medication. I'm like, I believe it. Finally, we get to the point where we actually see her in the window, and I think she hears a noise, but she, like, sees something across the street, because apparently no one closes their blinds. We close our blinds. Most people close their blinds, but apparently on the street she does. Like, they do not do that. Again, insane, impossible. But fortunately for Anna, her next door neighbor, they don't do that. So she sees Anna's husband stab her, or that's what she thinks, and she grabs her, or they're having an argument. So Jane grabs her voyeur camera. She used to stalk people around her. I find this excessively curious because she's doing this, watching them across the street, but she does not take photos of it. I know I'm panicked, but, like, I just met you a day ago. I'm not gonna be heartbroken that you died. It's a tragic situation, of course, but I'm not gonna be so in shock and so panicked that I won't think of, oh wait, I have a camera, so maybe I should take photos of this situation. I can obviously see it through the viewfinder. Like, why? Like, that's so stupid. And now you can go and check yourself. If you're actually going through delusion, you can be like, oh, here's my proof. Or you can validate yourself. But why wouldn't you take photos of the things you see? Like, that makes no sense to me. So she calls the police, and they're like, hey, they're being oblivious to the situation to make her question herself. Because I've called 911 before. They're not this oblique and confused. Like, they don't do that. And then we get a moment where, like, hey, did you stab her? Did you do it? Like, was it you? Nice blood, gory shot moment to give us that R rating. I was just confused because I didn't think she had delusions like this. You haven't given us moments of question her sanity. Does she even have a husband? Is she even separate? Does she have a daughter? Does she even go to a psychiatrist? You haven't given us those moments to question. Now you all of a sudden want to question the pills and the medication. Build up to that. Not let's give us a whole full murder scene of her getting someone stabbed and not being smart enough to realize of this moment, you know, like let's build up to it. I feel like this is probably what test audience had an issue with. They're like, what is going on here? The police finally come over. They take the time to go next door, and Jane's husband, whose name I feel like we maybe know, but like it's not relevant to the story, even though he's probably the murderer, tells the police, has convinced them that Jane is insane, has never met his wife, and is in a delusion. They go next door, they come and question her, and Anna is convinced she has. And now we get in the trope, which is like a time and again trope, because like obviously we know it's gonna happen, right? One or two things. Either she has been deluded this whole time and she's made this up, or which more likely is that it has actually happened. She's just been conditioned to believe what her opinions are like false, probably by her psychiatrist. Are either of these things I care about? No. But is Amy Adams giving me everything? Yes. She tells the police that she was zoomed in with her camera, and they're like, oh, did you take a picture? And she's like, no, I didn't. Again, why did you not? A common sense, like I feel like an impulse response is to click the capture on a camera and to take a picture. I didn't write the book. I didn't write the screenplay. We get a great gaslighting moment here where she's like, since show me Jane, and the police come and there's a woman who is not Jane, or at least the Jane that we were shown previously. And she's like, I've never met you. And she's like, oh, okay, show me Ethan, the son. And Ethan's like, yo, like, you never met my mother. So either there's a lot of gaslighting and his father has like a lot of manipulation going on, which I would not get, you know, like if you said you killed your mother, yes, you'd be homeless or any foster care, but you're 16 and like your parents are loaded. You probably have another family member, so you'd probably be okay. But would you want to be with your father's murderer? She's just going on these psychotic hunts to find out more about who, his name's Alistar apparently, Alistar's wife Jane, who she really is. Google searches, because he's an affluent millionaire, so there should be one photo of him at a charity auction. Not happening. From investigative journalism, a woman died by the name of Pamela, and apparently Alistar was her boss. She was an executive assistant, and she's murdered. So it's like, okay, does this man make a habit? Is this like his MO? Does he just murder women around him? Here I'm curious, but I'm not like too curious, because I also really don't care. But I also don't want her to end up in jail. Wild thing is this Jane woman stays around the fake Jane, and Anna does actually decide to take photos of what's going on so she can show it to the police. This time she's like, okay, let me take photos. But where's this going? I have no clue at this point. And part of me is like, okay, so you hired a woman to pretend to be your wife for the cops and to stay around. I personally have been like, what the fuck is going on? But if you gave me like $1 million, I'm like, okay, sure, I'll do it. But like, you know, like there's two sides of you at this point. Like, this is insane, but also like money. She sees Ethan from across the street, yells at him, and is like, come in here, comes in there. And she's like, why are you lying? So you don't remember. She's like, no, I know. He's like, I can't tell you. Alistar shows up and beats Ethan in front of her and is like, what are you doing? Not a ringing endorsement for like, oh, I totally didn't murder my wife, and that's pretend to make a wife, like pretended like it never happened and lied to the police and like hired someone to win. Totally not doing that, because they set up both sides. Because why make a whole film about this woman being crazy and seeing this thing that never happened unless some other manipulation had happened? With Girl on a Train, she was kind of psychotic, but we found out that her boyfriend has been like feeding her drugs and making her seem crazy the whole time and like misinterpreting things her whole life. Because you've not done a good job to make think she's like purely psychotic and crazy. Because otherwise, why is she not under constant supervision? I'm almost again trying to prove because she's not crazy. Goes through all her stuff and tries to find recall moment, the drawing that Jane did of her with Ethan when she came and visited. She finds it. And she's like, okay, I'm not crazy. She signed it. It says Jane Russell. Like, I didn't do that. But who can believe me? And then she's just like on her computer, and then like someone sends her an email, photo loads, and it's a dead woman. I think it's Jane, but it's kind of hard to tell. But she calls the police. They come over and they're like, are you sure? Like, who sent you this? Like, I don't know what's going on. Like, it's finally a photo, but like, I don't know. Kind of seems unnecessary at this point. Again, I'm over it. I'm so over this film. So over it. Oh, we're still recording. All right. Then we learn that her family's actually dead, and she's not been talking to her husband this whole time. That she has no daughter anymore. She killed them in a car accident because apparently I think she's like an affair or something was going on in her life. She was living a lie, and she's kind of convinced herself that she is in this place by herself because she's separated and her family lives somewhere else because they can't handle her agoraphobia. But in reality, they died in a car accident where she was the driver. Was I expecting that? Not really, but it kind of explains why she wasn't living with them. But I kind of just discounted. I honestly just didn't care. I was like, okay, they aren't relevant to the story. She talks to them, but now they're just making us think she's even more crazier than we thought. We see her go to this period where she's starting to question herself. Has come to the realization that she wants to kill herself. I'm like, why? How? These random people have made you question your whole existence for existing, but you've been fine before these people came in your life. But she's like going through her phone and she's like searching, just going through her photos, and then she sees a photo in her wine glass. She sees the person who feels is Jane. So it's like, oh wait, am I really crazy? But it goes back to the point, like, why did you feel like that you had to kill yourself? Like, you've been so sure of yourself this whole entire time, and you let these random people you don't even know that much question your whole existence. Your psychiatrist wasn't ready to bring that into you and to make you realize those things. So you weren't emotionally ready for your psychosis to go to that point. She chose Dave, her tenant, the photo of the wine glass. Again, all these really basic names, I guess, to make us remember things. She was in the photo. And he's like, no, that's not Jane. Her name's Katie. She's Ethan's birth mother. So maybe actually Katie is the psychotic one who came over, made her think she was Jane because she's missing on Ethan's life, and it's caused all these issues for her. And that's where we're at right now. So we're finally picking up the puzzle. An hour into this film, a lot late, but she tries to convince David to go to the police with her, but A, why would he? He's been crazy and weird during this whole time. He's a convict in the wrong state, and it's just not worth his energy. He's like moving out. Like, why would you do this for your woman? And this whole expedition, her whole thing, try to get him, convince him. She drops her computer, the screen breaks, but she has a Mac. So I'm like, isn't it on the cloud? It should be okay. Like, this is not a fun film. This is not an interesting film. This is not a thriller. This film isn't really radar. I see our audiences were like, hey, what is this? What are you giving us? We don't need this. I don't need this. It's 10 p.m. on a Monday. I got things to do. Like, go to sleep, not deal with this movie. Then you finally get to the point of the film where David leaves, her home is dark, it's raining. And I'm like, oh, finally, are we going to the thriller part of the film? Because none of this film has been thrilling. There's been no thriller. This has just been like a pure drama. Maybe Alistar's in the house, right? Maybe Alistar and Ethan are about to go murder her to cover up the fact they killed Katie. Like, you know, that's what I'm hoping for at this point. Anything less, and I'll be disappointed. Done too much for me. You've taken me too far. You wasted too much of my time. We get to a point and Ethan shows up with a knife, tells her, hey, David's dead. Kill David. Sorry about that. I'm about to kill you. And they've let her go if he just had not slept with her mother, made her upset, and maybe nothing would happen. Here, I was just not feeling it because I honestly felt something was sus about Ethan the moment I met him. Especially when she was like, oh, I'm a child psychiatrist. Like, he's like, oh, that's a thing? And I'm like, bitch, you seem like you need therapy. Like, when I just saw him come through, I was like, you need therapy. Like, he gave me those vibes. So I'm not shook. I wasn't surprised when he came in, knife in hand, I'm about to pose his murder on you. But like, wasn't wearing a glove at all. Just no one checks fingerprints in the 21st century. I'm pretty sure it's the first thing people do. So not plausible. I'm bored. But Ethan shows up. He's like, hey, I just like to murder people. I murdered my mom. I murdered my grandparents. So I'm like, I just like to be there when people die. I was gonna murder you, but I just want to be there around when you like die. And she's like, oh wait, no, I don't want to do that happening. Kill Dave. She smashes him with a wine bottle. Thank God she has a wine habit, right? Like, wine saves her here. Finally goes outside. She goes to the roof to escape. He follows her. There's a whole chase scene. He stabs her. She punches him to a window, and I'm assuming he dies. Maybe anticlimactic, but like, I didn't believe it. I just did not believe that this was him as a character all of a sudden. Didn't focus too much on his character development. Just made me seem like he was really crazy. It was the same thing. Final thoughts. If you see this movie in your Netflix top 10, do not watch it. Please do not watch this film. I spent 100 minutes of my life, and I'm doing this for a commentary review for you, so it took me 2 hours. Was Amy Adams a joy? Yes, she always is. She's a amazing masterpiece. Acting, great. Acting was not bad in this film. The downfall of this movie was not the acting. Was it the screenwriting? Maybe. Was it the plot itself? Maybe. I'd have to read the book. But when it comes down to this, I've never felt thrilled the whole entire film. There was no point in this movie where I was like, hey, I can't wait to see what actually happens. From the get-go, I knew that Amy Adams wasn't crazy or insane. I was kind of questioning the whole husband and child stuff, because like, why are you separated and not divorced and your children are away and you never see them? That was confusing. But I was like, okay, sure. She drinks wine and has medication. Okay. But like, tons of people do. Doesn't mean she's like a psychotic mess who will misinterpret things. And then all of a sudden, she sees a woman get murdered, calls the police. People think she's insane because she didn't take a photo. That was kind of weird. Why did she not take the photos? But okay, it's a point. But then we find out that Jane is the adopted mother of Ethan. His actual mother's named Katie. Ethan is actually a psychopath who has killed him in the past and like has made it his habit. He'd been like a new serial killer in New York. Would have loved that for New York. It gets brushed to the side. No whether Ethan's weird about it. Alistair is covered up for his son being a murderer. Not okay. Jane, also not okay to just pin this on this woman. Because like, countless women have died because of this. And then all of a sudden, which has not been displayed to us at all, that Ethan is this killer person. You spent this whole entire movie making us believe that Jane is insane, but I never believed it for a freaking minute. Once you showed me like her wine, her pills 4 times, I was like, okay, I get it. That's what you made people believe. But the moment I met Ethan, I was like, something off about this kid. He sucks. So I see why this is rated so badly on Rotten Tomatoes and everywhere. Because A, this book was written by someone who was a liar, who was a very bad liar, apparently. This movie, no. No. Do not watch A Woman in a Window. Don't do it. It's honestly kind of bad. I was like 15 minutes in and I was like, I just don't want to do this. I honestly did not. I just do not. There's no point where I felt that was good. I don't know. You watch the video at this point. Or you just click this point if you want to watch the movie or not. Like, don't do it. Don't do it. Like, absolutely don't do it. It's probably expensive, but it is now in the Netflix top 10. Just because something is in the Netflix top 10 doesn't mean you should watch it. That's my PSA for all of you. That's it. All right. Thank you guys for watching. I'm Kaya Simone. Please remember to like and subscribe because I want to do more of this, but I've been lacking motivation sometimes, but like I will try to keep it up for you guys if you really want this. So, all right. Thank you guys. All right. Bye. I'll see you guys the next time. Bye.